Let's see if this works. Okay, so it's.
Looks like it's on now.
I'm gonna.
Well, if you can't see us online, we're just getting started here. We'll be starting our panel in just a few moments here. This is the Davis Cherry Blossom Festival pre-festival panel. We have some amazing artists today that will be talking to us. We're gonna just start letting people into the Zoom pretty soon. Kind of a nice kickback kind of conversation here as we get ready for our festival this weekend. I will just wait a little bit before getting started as we room here. Panel is brought to you by the Davis Cherry Blossom Festival and Bakuhatsu Taiko-dan. This is a festival that we have in Davis, California. We're here in Sacramento today, Carlo and me, and we have some awesome artists from San Jose joining us, Roy, Michael, and Sydney, who we'll introduce in a second. But as we come into the room here, let's see how many people are here. If you felt like, whether you're joining us from YouTube or from Zoom, if you wanted to, write in the chat where you're from, we'll have some of our awesome team members. They'll be collecting questions throughout this whole time, and they'll be kind of presenting that at the end. We're gonna do some technical stuff really quick. Would you be able to switch? I'm reading out loud, but the typing is loud. Okay, is that gonna be a problem as are we gonna be typing?
No.
I think that was just getting started. I think we'll be able to manage that. Thank you for that notification. We're doing our best here. Welcome. Let me see. Lisa, maybe if you want to give me do you think should we get started? I can't quite see how everything looks on the back end.
Yeah, I think we're good to go.
Okay, people are able to get in. Awesome. Hey, thanks for sticking with us as we were getting ready. I'm going to get started with the panel here. My name is Gregory Wada. I am one of the directors of the Davis Cherry Blossom Festival. It's a festival we started in Davis, California some years ago. Being a taiko player in California, I played at a lot of gigs, and you go and you play sometimes, and you have a really fun time. You connect with the audience, but sometimes it stops there. It's just a kind of big drums, and we wanted to have a chance for artists to get together, taiko players to get together, and be able to talk story a little bit, tell each other their experiences, and share more about kind of the Asian American tradition that is taiko with kind of our audiences here in Davis. That's what got us started, but through this process, we've really kind of developed the festival into something where we have lots of different artists with different backgrounds who come and play and have fun together. And we've started having a panel with the COVID when we were all on, we wanted to continue that with our festival. But maybe while the festivals are kind of big, crazy kind of energy, we're going to do a panel today where we're all just sitting down the Monday, getting ready for our festival this weekend. That's what we'll bring to you today. So what we're focusing on today is just looking at some different experiences of Japanese American musicians. We call our panel Japanese American folk music, traditions in motion. But as we'll see today, what folk music is and the types of musics that are represented in Japanese America are pretty different and varied. And we're going to explore some of that variety today. I want to start today by just quickly introducing our guests. I'll let them say hi really quick before we get into the panel. First, today we have Carlo. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Carlo Watanabe. Most of my life I was Carl Watanabe. And then I came to the conclusion that how did my father name me Carl, which is so unusual because he could never pronounce it. And he was actually naming me after my mother, Kaoru. And so then I decided I'd like to be, and when I was in Cuba, they had trouble understanding me when I said Carl, but when they said Carlo, and everybody got it. And from that point on, there was no questions asked who I was. So anyway, I'm Carlo Watanabe. I was born in 1941, just before Pearl Harbor. I'm a Sansei. My grandfather became a citizen in Hawaii in 1898. My mother's also a Nissei. My father's a Nissei. He's also a Kibe. And so he was raised in Japan and came back and then came over to California in the 30s. And then he brought my mother over from Hawaii. And they had a son, Takeshi, who died very early, a daughter, Hiroko. And so we were all put in camp, and I was in Hila. And we went in as a family of 4 and came out as a family of 2. Both my mother and my sister died in camp at Hila. And it's more details I can go into if I want. But anyway, if you want. But the thing is, that's how it came about. Getting back to folk music and my involvement is basically folk music is popular music. And I just listened to the popular music of the time and got enthralled with it, and have loved it ever since. I started in grade school in band and played band instruments throughout my life. And then later on, I discovered the guitar and playing, and I realized that I could actually not exactly make a living, but I could make a few bucks. And I went to San Francisco State University, and so I got involved in the folk music scene in North Beach, and that's how I first got into that. And then from there, I got a chance to move to New York, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and then from Cambridge, Massachusetts, on to New Hampshire for a while. All the time I was playing music, and I was also in various bands. And the first band I was in, besides a high school band or something, it was a Bonsai Blues band in New Hampshire. And we basically played blues. And I was a big fan of Muddy Waters and rock and roll, but also folk music. And then I got involved in, well, I knew about Pete Seeger, and I knew about a bunch of people like that. And I happened to meet Pete Seeger in New Hampshire. And we played together, and he invited me down to an open mic in New York City. And this was back in 1964. And so I started to work and play more. I did that for a while, and then eventually I got involved in public television, and I hosted I got involved in public radio, and then I became a classical music host and a jazz host. And then I got involved in public television as a classic host. And then I stayed in public radio and then moved up as management and got away from being DJ. And I was at public radio stations in Boston, and then I came to and New Hampshire, and then I came to Sacramento about 1998. But from 1984 until 2020, I didn't play any music. I just stopped. But I picked it up again about 3 or 4 years ago. And so then I started to play the banjo, and I played the dobro, because I could no longer play the guitar because of problems with my wrist. But anyway, folk music is something I think has always been popular. I've always loved it. And I liked it because it was easy and it was fulfilling and it worked for me. So I never delineated a form of Japanese American aspects of it. I do know that I was always pleasantly surprised when, for instance, certain country and Western guys started playing Japanese songs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. One was really popular called Shii no no Yoru, which is, China Nights. And to hear that performed by country and Western artists in the 60s was a real eye-opener. And of course, we all know about Rigo Sakamoto and, Sukiyaki and all that. But here were quite country and Western guys, all decked out with bands behind them doing Shii no no Yoru, And I thought, wow, okay, so it's okay.
Yeah.
It seems to work. So anyway, I got back into it a couple, 3-4 years ago, and I hooked up with some people in Davis, and we played just straight out American folk music, like This Land Is Your Land, which has taken on new meaning for me now after all this anti-Asian hate and all these crimes and stuff. I love singing that song. And there's a bunch of other Woody Guthrie songs and Pete Seeger songs and all kinds of music like that. And so, and it's also very fulfilling to be with, as anyone who plays music, you really like to play with other people. And so being, folk music is easy entree to playing like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm really pleased. Our group is really pleased to be part of the Davis Cherry Blossom Festival.
Yeah, Carlo and Davis Diplomacy will be playing on this weekend.
Yeah.
So please join us for that as well. So I'm gonna that was a great answer to actually my first question, which I'll just kind of reiterate for our other panels, and maybe we could just like pass it off to them to kind of tell their stories as to maybe just to remind the panelists too. I think maybe we could each have go around the circle, and the question I have for you is sorry, I kind of got thrown off. If you wanted to just tell us a little bit about your personal family history, including how you kind of generationally identify and the role Japanese American identity has played in your life and music. So what Carlo kind of said perfectly, we can pass that same question off to Roy Hirabayashi, who's joining us from San Jose. Thank you, Roy.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. Yes, my name's Roy Hirabayashi. I'm here in San Jose, California. I grew up actually in Oakland, so I'm a Bay Area guy. I'm a Sansei, baby boomer, born post World War II. My parents are both Kibei, born here in the U.S., but the families went back to Japan, to Hiroshima area. And so both my parents actually were raised in Japan through grade school to high school and came back just before World War II broke out. And again, I was born right afterwards in 1951. And so, but I grew up in Oakland. During that time, it was really like a lot of stuff was happening in the Bay Area as far as around social justice and things. And that, I think that's what influenced my life the most, especially early on. And musically, I was growing up, I got into playing just classical music. I played a trombone and piano, but getting into jazz band and things like this, but it was all very westernized music. My parents would listen to some Japanese music at home, but that wasn't really the mainstay of what we were, at least what I was listening to or being involved with and on the music side. I really got into music quite a bit, especially on the orchestra side of things. And actually, when I was graduating high school, I really wanted to actually go to a music school. But my parents really said that's not a great idea and told me I can't do that, basically. So, which is why I ended up going to San Jose State to enter the chemical engineering program, far cry removed from being a music major. And that lasted about a semester anyways. But when I arrived in San Jose, basically, there was a lot of stuff happening. As I mentioned, growing up in Oakland, it was like during the Civil Rights Movement, Martin Luther King was actually doing his organizing. Cesar Chavez was doing stuff in San Jose area, starting in 1962. The Civil Rights Bill was passed in 1964. In Berkeley, the free speech movement was happening in 64 and 65. And the anti-war movement was starting up around that same time around the country, especially on the campuses. In my neighborhood where I grew up, the Black Panther Party was starting to organize in 1966. And at San Francisco State and UC Berkeley in 1968 was the Third World Liberation Front strike, or what was referred to as a Third World Strike, was happening in 1968, which led to the start of ethnic studies or the Asian American studies programs on different campuses, on college campuses. In 1968 also was when Tommy Smith and John Carlos were at the Olympics in Mexico on the track team, and they actually won their event, but on the podium, they raised a Black Power symbol, raised fist. They were San Jose State students. So when I came down to San Jose in 1969, they were on campus still at that time. And so, like I mentioned, there was just a lot of stuff happening around on the campuses. The anti-war movement, people organizing different ways. Cesar Chavez is speaking on campus, organizing. The Panthers are actually organizing at San Jose State. And actually, the different students are trying to organize different ethnic study programs. And so that's what I kind of got into real quickly at that point. And it was really based around the social justice pieces. I searched for identity and heritage. And just developing different things like this. Greg, I don't know how much more you want me to go into. I could stop here and pass it on to whoever's next.
We can get more into San Jose Taiko in the next question. So thanks so much, Shiroi. I think maybe we can pass it on to Michael Yoshihara. Would you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you. It's a nice honor to be asked to participate. Part of the San Jose Chidori band, which also Lisa Shiganaga on this board is participating in. She got me introduced to this idea of being on this panel. So thank you to everybody here. So a little bit about myself. Before, as a younger person, I was studying music through middle school, high school, primarily as a saxophonist, but also, with other instruments as well. And I actually went into San Jose State like Roy. I went in as a music major, but unfortunately, during my time there, I was battling illness with my IBF, and I had to actually stop playing for a while. And when I decided to come back and play after about a year or two off, one of the options that I came to was being asked to be in Chidori band in San Jose. So I thought of it as a lower pressured situation. So that's how I got exposed to it. I thought it was a great avenue just to maybe play in a lower key type of music environment, as I've always enjoyed performing and playing music. So anyway, here it is, some 30 some odd years later, I'm still a part of it. And it's been wonderful experience to have been in Chidori band. Now, Chidori band, what they primarily do is participate in many of the area festivals throughout the Bay Area in San Jose and the Bay Area. This upcoming weekend, we've got Nikkei Bansuri, but we also perform at many obons in the area, as well as some other local festivals. One of the things we do is have an anniversary concert. Now, with this anniversary concert, there's a lot of exposure to Japanese popular and folk music. So it's more traditional music. Yeah, so it's been a wonderful band to be a part of, to have the Japanese cultural and to bring it into the modern space. So.
Sorry, I was muted. Hey, thanks so much, Michael. Is there anything else you wanted to say about maybe growing up Japanese American did you grow up in the Bay Area?
Oh, yes, sorry. More about myself personally. I was born and raised in San Jose. So it was probably at a time where the Vietnam War was kind of ending, so there's still quite a bit of anti-Asian sentiment against Asian Americans at that particular time. I just remember as Asian American, we unfortunately got in a lot of fights because we had a lot of influx of the refugees coming over from Southeast Asia into our area, and we were grouped with them just because we look like them. And unfortunately, we as a group, as Asian Americans, had to stand up to this unfortunate time, where we had a profiling, physical profiling. And so I think part of that too kind of made me wanted to honor the roots of our heritage, our cultural part, and try to open it up a little bit more so that we're more like as one. We're just like anybody else here.
Thanks so much, Michael. Thanks for sharing that. And our last panelist, and last but not least, I think our youngest panelist, Sydney, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Sydney Shiroyama. I'm zooming in from Sunnyvale, California. I'm Yonsei, which is 4th generation Japanese American, and I'm 14th generation Jodo Shinshu Buddhist. My grandparents were incarcerated in the Poston and Jerome incarceration camps, and my grandfather served in 442nd. And I grew up in the Buddhist Churches of America community, and I was first exposed to Taiko through my Dharma school at the Palo Alto Buddhist Temple. Reverend Hiroshi Obiko, who was also one of the founders of San Jose Taiko, started our group in 1995, and I joined when I was about 7 years old. Yeah, so I'm still very involved with the Buddhist Churches of America. I'm actually thinking of transitioning from occupational therapy eventually into Jodo Shinshu Buddhist ministry. And to me, Taiko has always been connected with that community and with Obon and with my family. And I'm grateful to have mentors today like Roy Hirabayashi, who we are, ACTA, Alliance for California Traditional Arts, mentor and mentee for 2022. And yeah, I think that as Yonsei, I really try and reflect upon the experiences of the generations before me and try as best as possible to treat Taiko with as much respect and appreciation as I can. Nobuku Miyamoto, who was recently did a Obon webinar for the Buddhist Churches of America Music Committee. She mentioned, or she said, this is the space created by our ancestors that we are stepping into. And to me, like that quote is really kind of encompasses what I try and think about as I struggle morally with how to incorporate Taiko into my professional work. And yeah, maybe I'll go into that later.
Yeah, that's a lot that I want to ask you about there, but I think maybe this is a good time too. You know, we're all coming from different backgrounds. We have different backgrounds of people in the audience too. I would like to just talk a little bit about the music too. I know genre is a pretty tricky subject, but if we could talk, maybe we can go another roundtable. Maybe we could do the same order, and in as specific terms as you want. Do you mind telling us what you call the style or styles of music that you play? And if you don't mind giving us a brief description of like the genres that you play and how you got into them, as well as maybe some history of the groups you've played with. So Carlo, would you like to start us off?
Well, yeah, I started in grade school, and actually I started earlier than that. My father used to put the radio on every Saturday, and that's how I first, because it was a Japanese, show on, and so I started to hear that and realized that in Japan there were some really good musicians, and they were very serious, and they wrote catchy music, so I really enjoyed that. But when you're in school, you learn all kinds of folk music. That's what you do in class, and it stayed with me. And I was really shocked later on to find out that there are people like the Kingston Trio or a few other people singing and sort of making a life out of it. This was during the time when Elvis Presley and a whole bunch of rock and rollers were very, very popular, but still in all, you had some people playing folk music in there. So when I was in high school in the band, there were members of the band, and we would just get together and emulate and sing in harmony some of the songs we heard the Kingston Trio doing, for instance. That was a start. I don't understand exactly how folk music and my heritage have much to do with each other, but they obviously do. And it's pretty clear, but all I know is that it just seemed like I was just following a muse. Everywhere I went, there was a chance to play, and it got me, further along the path. And it was called folk music. But there were a lot of people making fun of it at the time because it was very simple and easy. But on the other hand, I found a lot of fulfillment in it. And there's a lot of nuances in how people sang and played. And there's really different in terms of what kind of part of the country you came from. And so when I was brought up in Southern California, there was almost like kind of a universal culture there. I didn't feel that Southern California had its own locational culture, like when I went to New Hampshire. In New Hampshire, I learned to play in contra dance bands, and I learned a lot of Irish music, and the Davis Diplomacy has a lot of Irish music that we're going to play. So that came out of that. I also, like I say, I was part of a blues band, so I just thought of the blues, but I didn't really think of it as folk music. I thought it was blues because it was more aligned with rock and roll, after all, and popular music. So I don't I never actually sat down and said, how am I connected? Other than the fact that I really enjoy it. And that's the bottom line. I enjoy what I'm doing. And it's something that since I retired, it's kind of taken over my life, playing in a couple of groups and all that kind of stuff. I really enjoy music, and that's the heart and soul of it. And I really enjoy music I can play, and that brings us back to folk music. In other words, if I was really a good classical musician, I'd probably be doing that. And if I could play the piano better, I'd probably be doing that. But remarkably, you can play the guitar or banjo, or you can play folk instruments so easily. And then you get past the idea of playing an instrument to the idea of actually becoming part of the music, and you get swept up. We all know the power of music. We all know the power of rhythm. And you get up and dance because rhythm happens. You're moved by melodies. And I just got swept up in all of that. And I continue to do it even now. So I sit in with jam groups, and we sit around and we play songs that people love. I love. So it's everything from Smokey Robinson to the Beatles, and all kinds of stuff, along with plain old folk songs. So yeah. So anyway, I'm doing what I'm doing because I can.
Yeah.
And I found a group of people who also like to do it because they can. And then we as a group are getting gigs because we can. And so I'm going to keep pushing that. Our Davis Diplomacy playing at the Cherry Blossom Festival. This is going to be the third time we've ever played it in a, doing our own sets besides doing open mics.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we all just got together a couple of years ago. Yeah. So, but the only reason we do it is because we all find escape from whatever else we're doing and fulfillment in the music. And it's just so much fun to be carried along in the music. And you get swept up in it. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I love music.
Yeah. Why else are we doing this? We do it because we like it, but we might have, you can reference all kinds of other cultural points, but we're doing it because we like it. I'm doing it because I love it. That's it. That's all.
Oh, thanks, Carlo. That's a great answer. Let's pass it to Roy.
Yeah, I guess I need to backtrack a little bit historically or timeline wise. As I mentioned, growing up, I was playing just basically the Western music, trombone and piano, the classical stuff, but getting into jazz band things. And as I mentioned, my parents said I really can't continue that. So when I left to go to Sansei State, I left my horn at home. I just decided I'm not going to do that anymore. But once I got down to Sansei State, I got a call from the band director who was saying they're going to start up a marching band on campus. And they knew that I played the trombone. So they were trying to recruit me to play. I didn't want to do that because that wasn't my style of music, but they offered a semester scholarship. So I was marching in a marching band. But that basically launched me back into music again, because realizing that this was something that was really kind of important for me. And I really wanted to do something that I wanted to keep that part of my life, basically, somehow. And so, and again, I mentioned I got involved with starting of the Asian American Studies program at Sansei State. And at that time, we were looking to how to connect with the community meaning Japantown and Sansei, which is just about a mile away from campus. And so we started to do some organizing in Japantown. And that's how I guess I got a part-time job as a youth director at the Buddhist temple. And that's, as Sydney mentioned, Reverend Hiroshi Abiko was there. And so it was the Reverend Abiko suggested, hey, why don't we use Taiko as sort of a way to bring more younger people back into the church? And I knew about Taiko basically growing up at an instrument that was used at Obon time. I'm also a Buddhist and grew up with the Oakland Buddhist Temple. But as far as group drumming, the only other group I really kind of saw was the San Francisco Taiko Dojo, which had started before in 1968. So they're actually relatively new too. Seiichi Tanaka, who is from Japan and was bringing the folk traditional styles of drumming from Japan. And so, but Hiroshi said, there's a group in Los Angeles called the Kinada Taiko group based out of the Senshin Temple in LA. And what they're doing is maybe something we could really model after. So we talked to Reverend Maskodani, and he helped us really to tell us how they were making the drums. They figured out how to take a wine barrel, put a cowhide on it, and make that their own version of the taiko, basically. And so, and Reverend Moss was doing that starting around 1969 or so. So Reverend Abiko and I and another person, Dean Miokusu, we started a Sansei Taiko group in 1973. And so we were the third group to start. We didn't have much resources. As I just said, there was only two other groups really doing taiko here on the style that we're doing now that's really popular. And so it was really trying to learn on our own and just do what we had to do. So musically, what we're, I always felt that our music for Sansei Taiko was really kind of a version of what I grew up playing in a way. And I was listening to R&B, jazz, Latin, soul, whatever, music. And so the rhythm patterns that we were playing, the kind of complex musical forms that we're doing, we're translating to using on the taiko drum as an ensemble. And so our sound as a taiko group was very different than what you may hear or what we are hearing from in Japan, because they're coming from the more folk and traditional side of playing the taiko, which is a little bit more repetitive in form musically. So I always felt that I was realizing that we were creating our own Japanese American sound, which was different than what was taiko in Japan, and different from any other instrument that was being used here, and not something that was really heard or known in the Japanese American community here in America. And so it was that calling that I realized that as a group, we could really create our own musical sound. Now, because, I said we were really drawing from our own instincts of what music was and playing and creating and writing our own songs from the very beginning, we never considered ourselves folk and traditional. We just thought we were more a community-based, ethnically based on an ethnically based instrument, the taiko, but not folk and traditional. We didn't even know what that term meant. It was not until a little bit later when we started to try to go after funding, and we got incorporated as a nonprofit, and we started to apply for grants in the arts world, realizing then that we didn't fit in the music category. We're not dance, naturally. We're not symphony. We're not opera. And so what were we? And so we had to kind of convince funders exactly what taiko is all about. And that was the challenge for us. And also learning at the same time that many times when we were applying for a grant, they would tell us, well, you're folk and traditional. But like what Carlo is saying, I don't think, my interpretation of folk and traditional is actually the kind of music that Carlo was talking about, because I listened to, Kingston Trio, Limelighters, and Peter, Paul, and Mary. That to me was folk traditional music in that context. And actually going back to Japanese folk music was the other piece, which is not what we were doing either. So it was really a difficult transition or understanding for us to try to do what we felt was Japanese American, go after funding that was considered folk and traditional, and try to play this middle line of between the two worlds, basically, as we try to grow what we felt was Sansei Taiko, which was different than San Francisco Taiko Dojo, who was a leader from Japan, or Kinada Taiko, which was Buddhist-based, and who we were as Asian Americans, Japanese Americans in Sansei Japantown. So I'll kind of stop there, Greg, unless you want to hear something. I have another question to what I'm saying right now.
No, other than maybe a quick follow-up in that, I guess industry-wise, like, do you consider yourself a folk? I guess maybe we can point out that I would like to say Roy Hirabayashi is a National Endowment of the Arts National Heritage Fellow, and which is the highest honor for folk and traditional artists.
Great.
Thank you for being here, National Heritage Fellow. How does that resonate with you now, I guess, in life?
Well, I feel over, because we're celebrating our 50th year, over the 50 years, basically, as I've been alluding to, is we really had to help kind of changed this mindset of what folk and traditional music is here in the United States. And so, so I think it has a much broader definition now than when we first started out in that sense. So it was a conflict for me. And then naturally when the NEA, National Endowment Arts, gave, PJ and I both have been receiving a lot of awards together, but when we both received that award, we felt we were finally being validated in a way, not only for doing taiko here in America, but for the fact that they were recognizing not so much that we are a folk and traditional art form, but that we're using the taiko to help build communities. And that's what they stated, actually. And that was really kind of our way of playing. That was really kind of important for us. And so being part of that changeover, or helping to kind of shift how folk and traditional arts is used here in the United States, has really been part of our mission, at least mine.
Thanks for that, Roy. That's really insightful. I'm gonna let Michael maybe also answer too. Just to remind us too, we're talking about the different kind of genres of music we play, and how we, just kind of in your words, what do you consider the styles of music you play, and tell us a little bit about the groups you play. And so, Michael, do you want you mentioned the Chidori band? If you want to just give us your full answer as well too.
Yeah, so I guess backing up too, we're, as a younger musician, we are, kind of exposed to, whatever music departments are giving to us, marching bands, jazz bands, concert bands. So of course, like probably most of us, that's kind of where we made our start in. But, once you start getting exposed to playing on your own and you have your own choice of things, so then being a saxophonist, we kind of gravitate toward doing jazz music, since saxophone lead lines tend to be there and it's a little bit more interesting to play. So of course I gravitated into that direction as well. But then I realized, just playing that, I was just like any other guy, and something was lost in there. And then all throughout that time, I would like going to the festivals, especially Obon, and then I'd listen to the Chidori band play, and I was thinking, wow, it's like, probably if I could play with them, we could make them sound a little bit better and do a little bit more with it. So, when I got the offer, and then, my schedule allowed for me to veer in that direction, I took the opportunity to jump in with the band, and realize, with playing, not just the playing, but also the music arranging and the direction of the group, we were able to change a little bit of it. And, I actually like with Roy's exposure, how he kind of changed a little bit of the folk music of taiko. We kind of did a little bit of that with the Obon music. I mean, we took, things like Tankobushi or Obon no Uta, and then, we have a bunch of saxophones or horns or, American instruments replacing, basically taiko, fue, shakuhachi, or whatever is going on in the Obon music that was written, and, creating a new sound. And that sound today has become, what Chidori plays. And, I find it interesting to hear our music today, because it's evolved quite a bit over the years to fit whoever comes in. And currently we got a bunch of saxophones, so when you hear us, it sounds like a saxophone ensemble with some rhythm section behind it, and of course all the singer vocalists that are in front of it. So it's been kind of a cool experience to be able to have a, I guess, an entertainment factor to it. And we've been lucky enough to I guess increase the participation of some of the local Obon festivals down here, and then with collaboration with some of the other musicians in the area, including the Sansei Taiko, we've even enhanced it even more, being able to give even a different sound to the Chidori experience. And I guess that's what I've been very happy, I guess, with the Chidori band accomplishments over the years.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Michael. Having gone to San Jose Bone for over a decade now, like that music is Chidori band is what I kind of associate with obon, yeah, in a sense too. So it, you know, and maybe in that community sense, it is just kind of part of the kind of lived memory of how I experience obon even. So thank you for those insights as well. Let's turn it to Sydney for the same question.
Okay. Yeah, so I kind of struggle with my own identity as an artist, or that label, because I'm not a taiko performer, but I suppose my art is in the way that I facilitate taiko, and I share it with communities in an effort to increase the accessibility of the art form and also explore inclusive practices. I'm an occupational therapist, and when I was a student at San Jose State, I researched the therapeutic benefits of taiko for people with disabilities and other health conditions. And upon graduation, I was fortunate enough to work as a consulting occupational therapist with different taiko groups such as San Jose Taiko and Kodo on their wellness projects. And with San Jose Taiko, we created a Parkinson's recreation class. And in 2019, I presented a poster about that class and that experience working with the group at the World Parkinson's Congress in Japan. And many people at the conference, many of whom were therapists, they had maybe never heard of taiko, but they were very excited about the potential effects and benefits to the Parkinson's community. And like in their excitement and their encouragement, they said to me like, oh, well, maybe taiko could be like the next yoga. And so that kind of gave me some pause thinking about like, well, I think yoga has done, is great for like so many people. There are parts of that kind of made me pause and want to kind of think about how the like the culture and the spiritual aspects of yoga maybe have been a less of a focus throughout as it has gotten popular in the Western therapeutic world. And so through my journey, it became clear to me that the next step would be to research taiko. And in order to do that, I would have to kind of find what the most productive form of taiko is, or maybe the form that has the most health and wellness benefits. And so that made me worried about perhaps going in the direction of like yoga and secular mindfulness, where culture and religion is sometimes referred to as cultural baggage and cast aside to get to like the essence of the art form. And so at that point, I wondered like, I kind of felt a lot of weight at that point. And I wondered like how I could consolidate, the art and culture of taiko to teach it to therapists who maybe had never heard about it in order to teach to their patients. And I worried about reducing the art form to therapeutic effects and leaving behind like, the culture and history and spirituality. And so that's kind of where I am today with more questions and answers. And, I'm here on the panel, like not to make any conclusions about what's right or wrong, but after a lot of reflection, I have a better understanding of like what's the right path for me personally and like what I'm comfortable doing and what I'm comfortable sharing as far as taiko goes. So, yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Sydney, that journey. I think maybe I want to take a moment, kind of where we are in the conversation, to think about. I think each of us kind of each of our panelists gave something about how their music kind of relates to community. And so I wanted to ask a question maybe about that kind of relationship between people who are either in an ensemble together, or the relationship between the musicians and dancers, musicians and listeners. So maybe I wanted to ask, in many ways your music is performed and received by communities of listeners, whether through, teaching, music education, through playing in ensembles, performing at community events like Obon, or through community wellness programs like Sydney. Maybe just kind of an open-ended question. Do you see your music or music in general as being in service to broader social or community issues? Should we do the order again or pop in?
Sure. One of the things about playing music, not only is it fulfilling inwardly, I mean, it makes you feel good when you're playing songs or stuff, right in your own room, for instance, but there's real joy when you share it with other people and other people like it. And it's kind of a way of reaching out. And the small community of Japanese Americans that I knew in Chino, most of us were pretty shy. We didn't actually put ourselves out there. And one of the things that happens when you're doing taiko or playing folk music or anything is you really have to be willing to let yourself be judged and just put yourself out there because you like it so much. And it's just kind of groundbreaking for me that I would be normally kind of shy. On the other hand, when I started to sing or play, especially when I was in a band or anything like that, it just felt more comfortable connecting with people around me. And so once that affirmation happens, then you want more. You do it a lot more often, and you try to get better at it or whatever. And so that was a big moment for me, realizing that not only did I like to play, but sometimes other people actually like to listen to it. I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, but it's kind of nice. And so then it stimulates you to keep going. And then when you meet other people and like-minded people, then you suddenly realize that you're part of another group, and even though you've never met. And as a matter of fact, I feel the same way right now about, even through Zoom meeting Sydney and Roy and Michael, that we all have this shared love of music that's kind of bringing us to this particular moment, And also music is a way of connecting not only to, it makes me more mindful. I mean, I know it's kind of a bored cliche about being mindful and all that kind of stuff, but when you're actually playing the music, you have to be there. Yeah, you really have to, and so if you're doing it like that, it's another whole experience it's another part of life that didn't exist before. That's all. And it gave me another purpose, besides taking care of my cats or whatever I'm doing, there's just something to do that really involves other people, and it's self-generating in that way. So
Thanks, Carlo. That's a beautiful answer.
Yeah.
We just go around. Roy, do you want to answer that question?
Sure. Thank you. I guess after getting into doing taiko and just seeing how because we were starting to be asked to play at community festivals in the Japanese community, like the obons or other things, and realizing that the taiko was really a great calling instrument to bring the community together. And so, when we started to play it, and it would draw a crowd and audience with people come take a look and see what was going on, basically. And so I realized also then that there was no other music or instrument that does that for our community in such a powerful way, that it's an important part of what our community needs and what we can do to help to support the community. So I felt that in a way that we're creating the new Japanese American musical sound through the taiko in order to help bring people together, to ground the community, to try to draw and bring people together. And so I feel that's been a part of how I feel I've approached to how why taiko is really important, at least why I feel I do taiko, and seeing how it has done that in different ways in other communities. And so it's interesting, though, as I mentioned, we're the third group to start: San Francisco, Los Angeles, Kanata, and then us. And the first three taiko groups are now in the three basic remaining Japan towns. And so what's interesting now is that taiko is spread across the country and around the world. Outside. I think I like to say that when we started Sansei Taiko, we were part of the third group to start outside of Japan within the Kumidaiko style, basically. Because but now it's all over the world. So it's really kind of interesting to see how that has spread. But at the same time, the roots of how taiko has grown outside of Japan really kind of started on the West Coast, California. And so from that, in other words, the first three taiko groups, from that, it really kind of came out of the Japanese American community. And that's, I feel, is an important part of the story that needs to be remembered and told. Unfortunately, I feel as taiko has grown, not only in the United States, but internationally, that piece of the story of how taiko has grown is being lost or ignored or not known. And so I feel that's an important part of what I'd like to be doing, what's important for trying to maintain that story of what taiko is all about.
Meeting. Thanks, Roy. That's a really powerful answer. Thanks so much for that. Michael, did you want to answer that same question?
So I feel like music is universal in communication, and being able to write, arrange, perform, whether it's with Chidori at Obon or whether I'm at a different festival playing in a different group, say in a jazz group, the expressions that we can do to give to the audience or create happiness or festiveness or togetherness or oneness. I mean, you kind of erase a lot of I guess the negativity, and hopefully, we can bring out a lot more positivity, and then, oneness amongst the group that's there. And, that's what's always been a pleasure for me. I think here in this discussion group, it can be most related to the Obon performances that we have, as you could see the amount of people that come out, and, through all the different sounds that's created throughout the weekend, with all the different, at Sansei Obon, for example, all the different taiko groups, and then we get to do the instrumental parts with the Obon Odori going on in the end. It's just a great way to communicate with people and express our cultural heritage, and hopefully I'll be able to continue to do that for a few more years here.
Thanks, Michael. And Sydney, did you want to answer that one?
Sure. Yeah, so I thought it was interesting that after I graduated with a master's in occupational therapy, that a lot of people would come up to me and within the taiko community, and they'd be like, "Oh, like, what are the therapeutic benefits of taiko, and how is taiko healthy?" And they kind of wanted to hear from, like, I guess, a professional, or somebody with that experience, like how it's healthy, or how it can be healthy. And I always just thought it was an interesting dynamic, because I was like, don't we know? Like, haven't we experienced all these effects? I just thought there is this maybe sense that when practice has been validated, I guess, by a healthcare professional, it can start to become healthy. But in fact, I really try and assert that it's always been a health promoting activity. It's always been a community building activity, and it's always been therapeutic. And it's not like that there's a therapeutic version, like a wellness version, a non-wellness version, as an art form. This is incredibly important for the wellness and the wholeness of our community. And what really got me interested in this topic was actually reading some of Joseph P. Gahn. He's an indigenous researcher, and he really asserts that community and cultural centered forms of intervention are the most appropriate and effective if the community has experienced historical trauma. So, for example, as Japanese Americans, if our community went through a period of time where we were shamed for practicing our art and culture, and for being Japanese, then what can be therapeutic is to actually reclaim that from within the community. And I do think that is what happened. I'm not saying that thanks to taiko, there's no intergenerational traumatic effects, but I do think it's pretty incredible that after 4 generations, I can play taiko at Manzanar with my collegiate group, with my grandma, my Nissei grandma watching on, and she never had those opportunities, but I do. And so I think as a community, the work that Roy has done, and the work that our pioneers and our ancestors have done so bravely, I think it has really shown to be beneficial for our community. So.
Thanks for those great answers. Yeah, I like to say, as a taiko player, I like to play auntie music. If my aunties like it and if it's moving that community, that's kind of makes me feel good. But I think, Sydney, I think you really hit on something else I wanted to talk to you about this panel. You know, we're having a panel of Japanese American musicians, and I think it's hard to talk about Japanese American culture, Japanese American music, you know, without talking about, you know, the Japanese American experience. And, you know, we know that the incarceration of over 120,000 Japanese Americans during World War II had devastating consequences on families and communities, and it's really shaped how Japanese American, you know, how they've experienced across, you know, generations of experiences, I guess. So I wanted to ask, like, in what ways, if any, has this specific history influenced, confronted, or maybe it's like remembered by your music, and how this history has shaped your personal journey as artists as well? You want to try popcorning it, or should you want to go around? Let's go around. Let's go around. I feel like everyone just got such wonderful things to say. Carlo, you want to start it with that one?
You mean, to understand you better, are you saying World War II and being incarcerated, what impact that has, and what, how can I speak to that? Or
Well, yeah,
I
mean, as a former incarcerated too, like if that personal journey, how's that, if that comes out in your music, or if you feel that connection?
I've been, you know, I lost a couple of members of my family, and even so, though, I think I'm incredibly lucky as a person. And there's a whole group of us who were incarcerated who actually had a good time there. It shocked me the first time I actually interviewed other people my age, but people who went in, I was a baby, and there are people who went in as toddlers, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years old. They really had a great time there. They remember it as a time when they could do a lot of different things that they couldn't do before. It's the generation that, or the people who came before, or the people who came after that had a harder time. Especially it was tough on people who were 8 or 9 or 10 or teenagers, especially. That was really rough to be taken away from stuff like that. But when you're 1 year old, you don't know any better. And I've met people who were 3 or 4, and you know, they look back on it fondly. Because in camp, what happened is we all had a nuclear family, mother, father, sister, and myself. And all of a sudden, when you go to camp, you eat in a mess hall, and suddenly you spread out, and there's a bunch of tables with a bunch of kids, there's tables with junior high people, there's older, you know, they kind of separated. And so that nuclear family changed in terms of their meals and how they met each other. And so that changed the culture a lot. And so that disseminated a lot of different ideas and thoughts about what you wanted to do. And because I've read a lot of accounts of people who were in camp, and they all say the same thing. That a lot of times they actually had a good time because it was so different. What was hard is coming out of camp. And so when you came out of camp and you're 6 years old and you go to your grade school, and the idea of World War II is so fresh in the community's mind. And then this is the case where you're simply identified as a Jap. And so it was really a shock for me to go to school because they were constantly asking me, and I really dreaded December 7th, because that was the day the rest of my classmates would all jump around and you know, make remarks. And anyway, it was really hard. So one of the things that's kind of saved me was, you know, finding music and finding things that I could do that took me out of that, because I didn't see any connection to what sin was it because I was Japanese. You know, what sin was it? You know, I didn't understand the reaction of the community as an elementary school kid. So it was music that helped me out of that, and music that allowed me to interact with people and engage with them. Mm-hmm. So that whole camp experience, I can't speak to. I've done a lot of reading on it, and I'm fanatical, you know, on keeping, you know, when I meet people, oftentimes when I'm my age, I immediately say, what camp were you in? And they identify, and I know, you know, and, you know, when you talk about Jerome, Arkansas, and, you know, when you're talking about Poston, Poston was so damn hot. I had relatives in Poston. I was next door in Gila. And so I know that that experience really affected people who were older. And so I kind of dodged the bullet on that one because I was just an infant or a toddler. But I do know that afterwards, the idea of being part of camp there was a tremendous amount of shame. And I never understood it. Where does that shame come from? My father didn't want to talk about it. And of course, my mother, who died at the age of 26, I couldn't talk to her. And my sister, who died at 4, I couldn't talk to her. So I had nobody else. So I have a little different experience than some of the other panelists because of the isolation of my upbringing. In Chino, there was just a few of us. And when I graduated in high school, my graduating class was 588 kids. And there were 2 of us who were Japanese American. And so I had no interaction, very little interaction. The church I went to was a Baptist church in Pomona, California. I mean, we were Buddhists, of course, and we drove in to Los Angeles once in a while for certain events. But every Sunday I was a Baptist. And so I learned a lot of Baptist hymns and enjoyed them and had a great time until I realized how racist they were and how misguided they had, about a lot of things. And I never really thought about the fact that the small group of Japanese Americans at this Baptist church met on a separate night. Rather than, we could still go on Sunday with all the others, but we had a special thing, and we had our own little church employee kind of leading us along. So I'm always struggling with connecting the real world with my past and how it should be, how I should be. So I don't know how else to be other than to be who I am. And it turns out to be just some mishmash of middle-class American guy, so.
Yeah. And not to over-relate that to the, I don't think everything has to be tied to the music or anything, but I wonder, like the Americana kind of folk music, was that a scene that you felt like welcome into, or that you were a participant of this kind of shared Americana kind of Pete Seeger style?
I like all music.
Yeah,
when I was in band, I loved all playing band. I loved marching. I loved the songs. I learned a lot of marches. I liked John Philip Sousa marches, and then later on, when I was in the jazz band, I liked whatever we were playing. It didn't matter. And so when I got to San Francisco State, there was a lot of choices, but there were things that I could do. I was a music major, and I was also a radio and television major, but we played music, and the way I made money was just to sing and play. And so it was kind of like gathering everything around me and using it as best I could. It's just that I like any kind of music. It really doesn't matter. And I noticed that the key thing with me is that when you run into people who are serious about their music, it doesn't really matter whether you first liked it or not. If someone is serious about it, then I realize that you have to give them some respect and listen to what they're doing, because it's part of their life. And I realize the same thing with me. So if you find someone who really enjoys music, I just kind of gravitate to them and want to know more about what they're doing and how they're doing it and learn how to do it.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Carlo. Do any of other panelists, Roy, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
I think the rest of us are all born after the war. So actually we have only the stories from our parents, if they told us any at all. So I really don't have that direct, camp story experience to share. I think musically, what we are seeing that came out of the camps was really the big band swing stuff, and that's, that was the most popular thing that we found that was existing in the camps. And Shirley Minamoto, she did that film a few years back, around the koto and the development of that. And her film, really highlighted how the Japanese traditional arts or musical instruments they were able to practice in the camps, but it was really difficult for them. It wasn't like something widely accepted or shared. And so I guess within the context of knowing that, it's really kind of interesting to see that the Japanese arts, musical arts, were kind of held back, and westernized swing music, big band music would kind of push forward. And that even was happening in Japan, basically, because after post-World War II, Japan was totally being Americanized or westernized, or what I considered by being colonized by the US government at the time, just to be just a drastic changeover. And that not only changed, with the lifestyle and everything, but also, there's customs and music and everything in Japan too.
Roy, could I ask you a follow-up about when you started Taiko? Like, were there any conversations with your parents, or how did they feel or interact with that type of music that you were creating?
My parents, like you mentioned, they're Kibe. They're primarily Japanese speaking, and so naturally when they were intern, because they had come back to the U.S. just before World War II, so they were intern, hardly speaking any English at all. So after the internment process and everything, they had a difficult time to relocate and get work and reestablish themselves. And so when I was getting into music, naturally they wanted us to, again, perhaps be westernized or Americanized. So Western music was a key. But when I started Taiko, my mom would say to me, "Why are you doing that? Because it's such a loud instrument. You don't want to draw attention to yourself." And my answer was, that's why I want to do it. It's really the voice that I've never really had an opportunity to do. And so for her, my parents, it was really kind of part of, basically, yeah, don't stand out too much, don't rock the boat, don't cause trouble type of thing, because they just had to go through so much in order to endure themselves, just to survive during the time that they were when they had come back over here and just trying to reestablish themselves. So, it took me a while to understand why they were saying that, and what was, why they didn't want to share their experiences with us, and, the difficulties they had. And so it was much, much later that I realized that it took a long time for my parents to accept the fact that I was doing something so different than what they expected. And I didn't realize until after my mom had passed, unfortunately, it was that I always kind of thought that she really didn't like what I was doing, but I found this box of news clippings that she had kept from every newspaper thing that she could find, and kept it, in this box. So I realized she really did honor what we were doing, basically.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really powerful. I got tears. Thanks for sharing that, Roy. Can I ask, so those are our two Sansei panelists. If Michael and Sydney remember their Yonsei, so fourth generation Japanese Americans, if you want to add anything to that conversation, maybe either order, if anyone wants to do it. Michael, do you want to do it? Sorry, I should respond.
So I think I've been very fortunate to actually participate in two bands that probably have some link to the camps. Chidori band, of course, its history actually was during camp time, they would have like some type of entertainment or plays or things like that. And, for those that had instruments or were able to gather instruments, I understood that they, tried to do some of the Japanese music into there. And so in 1953, when Chidori started, there was actually many other bands like Chidori, but San Jose's version was Chidori band, and they started out actually by doing more like theater things, not really obon music. And so they just did plays, and eventually they got asked to get involved with the obon. And then I think a few years, I was almost about 1960 by the time they actually started getting more involved with all the local obons and started performing with them. the other band that I had, and it's not Chidori, was George Yoshida's J-Town Jazz Band. That was based out in San Francisco. They too also, when I was talking to a lot of the elder people, had a similar story. They wanted to perform big band music. So like Roy was saying, that was kind of the thing to do for the younger Japanese, and so they wanted to form a big band, and eventually, it became the San Francisco George Yoshida's band, and I would have the honor of performing with them for several years before, they decided to no longer perform together. But my relationships with some of the older members of both bands, it's priceless, to hear what they had to say, and, to hear, that they're very happy that we've continued to perform as younger Japanese American musicians to carry out, what they started. So.
Yeah, such a powerful history for the Chidori band. Thanks for sharing that. And then Sydney, did you want to share your experience?
Sure. Yeah. I think I kind of answered this question in like some of my other answers, so I don't want to go on too much. But I like for me, a huge part of my early Taiko experiences have been with the Buddhist Churches of America, and the Buddhist Churches of America, or BCA, like is the way it is now, in part because of the incarceration experience. I don't like want to speak upon like the whole organization, but like it did like there were a lot of elements that were changed like during camps, and including like the name of the organization. It was before Nishi Honganji Mission of America, and then during incarceration they changed it to Buddhist Churches of America, and a lot of the temples go by church for this reason, and the architecture of the temples are very like Christian influenced, and we have like a bishop, which is like the head minister, and all these things that kind of were implemented to like blend in as much as possible to an American society. And so this also includes like Sunday school. Like I grew up calling it church. I would go to church, go to Sunday school, and then play taiko with Sunday school, and so like it's something that I reflect upon, and like kind of now really reflect upon my own privilege of being able to like embrace my identity as Japanese American and as Jodo Shinshu. And when I think about like presenting taiko, for me to say like, oh, here's taiko, like it's a tool for your like to strengthen your arms and to like strengthen your cognition, but yeah, it's just like a drum, like to me that's not taiko actually, like that's not like the culture and art of taiko, but it's like a drum, and maybe that does have a really important place in a therapeutic context, but like for me it doesn't feel like it's right to share that. Like I'm missing so much and I'm cutting so much out, and so this also kind of like I try and think about this when I introduce myself to like I try to introduce myself as Yonsei and as Jodo Shinshu. And even if it takes us an extra second to explain it, I think it's important. But it's so hard because it's just so easy to start with like, oh, I'm Sydney, I'm an occupational therapist, like there's like a academic title like next to my name, and it's just like I've reflected on how maybe I've been colonized too, to like lean in on that side of things and not so much like my religion and culture. So. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Oh, sorry. My bad. Some mic stuff going on. Thank you so much, everyone. I think I want to just let our student panelists know now. So Maddie, David, and Lisa, who's been collecting online questions, if you want to prepare those at this time. Maybe what I can do is are you ready right now, or do you have the ones from online, Lisa?
We received one from the form that people needed to fill out, the registration form. Maybe we can start with that, or if for the members, like Bakuhatsu members that are in this Zoom call right now, you can feel free to just drop your questions into the chat, and then we'll go through them one by one, if that works with you. Okay. So the question, should I just present it? Is that okay, Gregory? I'll put it in the chat as well, but somebody had asked, how do you decide which traditions to keep or add and which to let go of? And what is your favorite instrument to play, favorite songs to play, and why? So a couple there, but maybe you can pick and choose or answer all of them.
Anyone want to jump at this one, panelists? Can I ask you, Carlo?
Why don't we start with someone else
Okay,
first?
sorry.
I feel like I'm eating up too much time
Let's
here.
go reverse. Sydney, did that?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. This is like, I'm not sure the answer to this, but I think for me, like what I've decided is like, if it's important to me and like to my heart, and like then I think it's important to share. And like maybe what people I share with, like I don't know if they'll care necessarily, but like I care, and I feel like it's important to try. Like it's important to present it as like that feels like it's truly me and things that I care about. And maybe, you know, it'll resonate with some people. Maybe they'll say, okay, I don't care. But like, at least I put it out there, you know, and somebody is like heard it. And yeah, so that's kind of my approach, I think. And my favorite instrument to play. Oh, oops, where'd it go? Well, I really love, right now I'm teaching the Silicon Valley Down Syndrome Network community with my sister actually, and we teach that group on like Saturday mornings, and it's always just so fun like to be with them. And I kind of am trying to like remember what it felt like to play with Reverend Abiko, who really just like played without ego, just like jammed, didn't really care so much about like musical like technique, but just like really tried to play joyfully. And so that's kind of my favorite way to play right now.
Michael or Roy, did you have any answer to that one too?
Well, you know, I'll say the favorite song, I guess, and maybe that's it'll kind of incorporate the traditions and things like that too. But I think my favorite one is Shiwasa Samba. That's it's an Obon dance. You know, it's actually one that we, you know, when Sansei Taiko is with us at Sansei Obon, we actually even have the fortunate opportunity to perform with them, and it's kind of, you know, it's an Obon song, but it's you know, it's kind of shows how the Japanese American culture has changed over time, you know, where we've gone from something very folk-like, from a tankobushi to all the way to something that you can dance with some, you know, different types of rhythms. In fact, it's got kind of a jazzy type of sound to it, and that's probably the one that I like as far as my favorite song to play. So.
Maybe for Roy, just to kind of combine with some of the other questions we've had, a question to Roy, but also maybe to in general is, what are some ways you think the origin of Japanese American Taiko can be preserved? Do you think that's maybe something we can tie into that same kind of question, right?
Wow. I feel, I guess, I kind of mentioned before, I think that the preserving the history of how Taiko started here in America is really kind of important. And a question I am always asking when I'm out teaching or doing things with other groups is the Taiko an instrument, or is Taiko a cultural art form? And also, when you write music for the Taiko for your group, are you writing a percussion piece, or are you writing a Taiko piece? And what's the difference? And so I think if people could answer those questions, they might be more on the track of understanding what Taiko is all about, versus them using the Taiko as just another instrument to have a lot of fun with. And then in general, I kind of feel that's the direction Taiko has been going as it spread across the world. It's become just another instrument, and somewhat appropriated in some ways also, because there's a lack of understanding of the roots and understanding in the cultural context for what Taiko means to us as Japanese Americans, or to people of Japan, basically. And so I think that's really kind of the key thing, is understanding the roots and history.
For everyone, that was Angela Yang who asked that question. Thank you for that, Angela. did you want to say anything about your favorite song to play, Carlo? Or what traditions to keep, maybe, and what to change?
Well, I have so many favorites. I mean, I really love jazz, and I'm really hung up on Giant Steps by John Coltrane. And as kind of an exercise I do on the piano, just so that I don't lose it. And I don't play it well, but I mean, the thing is something I do. I also like a lot of songs just because they're technically challenging. And one of the beauties of playing any instrument is overcoming the technical difficulties and actually doing something so that you kind of feel proud of what you played. So I don't have any favorites. I just like everything a lot. And right now, because the group I'm in is going to be playing, I'm pretty much focused on what we're going to be doing, which is right out of the Great American Folk Song Book, kind of like.
Yeah.
And but I really enjoyed singing, and I think it's very therapeutic in its own way to just learn how to sing, because it involves learning how to breathe. And it involves lots of things of that nature that normally I don't do and worry about. So yeah, I don't have any particular favorites. I just have the things that I'm working on at the moment, and I'm totally engaged. So yeah.
Yeah. Maddie, did you have questions from Bakuhatsu that you would like to present?
Well, Angela is actually a member of Bakuhatsu, and she did have some more questions, but I guess to follow up to Roy's for sorry.
Awesome. Maddie's been working the soundboard.
Oh, yes. Regarding Roy's answer to Angela's question, and I guess this can be a question to the taiko players in general. I guess what else would you like young taiko players to think about as they start to play and as they continue to play taiko? And I guess this can be in like the collegiate aspect and also like professionally. So for individuals who might be interested in like auditioning for San Jose Taiko or just getting more involved in that scene. Yes, that is my question for, I guess, Roy and Sydney, but.
I'll try to start. It's a hard question to give a short answer, basically. I guess, again, I just have to say, just a real basic thing is understanding history, and that also, that really kind of means your own group's history, how it got started and where it came from and why your group started. I feel now, though, there are so many. One thing about taiko is really kind of spread so widely and so quickly. There's so many groups now. There's not one way to play taiko anymore, which is what it should be. And so understanding why that is and where all that is coming from is really kind of important. And some people feel when they get into taiko thinking that since it's a Japanese instrument from Japan, that the real roots, which it is as an instrument, comes from Japan. But the form, the style, the kumidaiko form that we're doing, if you understand the history of it, actually parallels for a large part of the history of the style, the form, it parallels what has happened here in the US, in America. And so a lot of the kumidaiko style influence, I feel now what we've been doing here has influenced Japan taiko, basically. And so where do you go now for the root cultural context is the question, and how do people understand that? Is it actually going back to Japan, where you have people who are doing taiko, which is influenced from what we've been doing here in the US now? And so it's a big question, and people just don't understand, again, the relationship of where things have come from and what that may mean. And it's really kind of raising a question. I like to raise a question, where are we going with all this? And how can we understand better in order to really kind of keep some kind of essence for what taiko really means and how it's supposed to be played and where it came from? I hope that kind of answers your question. And maybe I think Sydney probably could better spin on it than I can.
Okay, well, I don't think I can, but yeah, I mean, this is a really, really big question, and I think it's really great to like discuss it. And like, I don't know that there's an answer, but even just asking it, I think is a really like important step. And And, I think like understanding or maybe appreciating that like our experience as I was also in collegiate taiko. I played for Kyoto at UCLA. But yeah, understanding like that our experience as a collegiate taiko player, like it's a gift, like it's gifted to us by people that have bravely, fought to play taiko and to bring it and make it more accessible. And with this gift, we are also like part of a larger history. Like our stories are now intertwined with that larger history. And that might be like daunting, like it might be a little scary to think about, but I think it's actually really exciting. It's kind of like a family tree. And, at any point of a family tree, you can like, learn about your ancestors and like reconnect with estranged relatives and stuff like that. And so I think there's always opportunity to find out more and to find those connections and really appreciate them, and kind of, try new things. Like, I think that, I don't think either of us are advocating that it has to be like Japanese American, like, has to be done in the same way, but things can evolve, and that's totally fine. But I think like also just like picturing that in the larger narrative and like within the culture and community, I think is like important to consider. So
I just want to add real quickly though, I really want to congratulate and say what Bakuhatsu is doing, what you folks are doing at Davis with the Cherry Blossom Festival and all that, what you've been doing. It's just amazing, and that you're bringing it back to the community in that sense. So congratulations.
Wow. Okay. Thank you both for your answers, and thank you for that as well. There are quite a bit of Bakuhatsu folks here, so I'm gonna open it up to them and to David.
Just about out of time. So I think just for everyone's the panelists' sake, I'm so sorry, everyone. There's a lot of questions that I wish we could have done today. Thank you for all the Bakuhatsu members who showed up. Thank you for all our friends at the other collegiate taiko groups or from across whoever is here today. Just trying to share more conversation about kind of what we do and do what, Sydney and Roy, Carlo, Mike are talking about, being community together through music, right? I think that's what we're really trying to do. So I want to give some thank yous really quick. Thank you to all our panelists one more time. Thank you to the Northern California Koyasan Buddhist Church where we are. There's drum stacked over there where where the Sunday schools or the schools of children play here as well. I want to thank our panelists and our production crew. So Maddie here, who's been running sound and helping organize the thought behind this, as well as David, who is in the audience, David, did you have anything you want to say? Actually, David, he's been the student kind of director for the Cherry Blossom Festival. Can you just say hi real quick, David?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Yeah.
Thanks for all your work, David. You come see them both perform at the Davis Cherry Blossom Festival. We'll come see Carlo perform. I want to get one more, we're going to go around the horn one more time. And if you would just mind just saying anything that's coming up for you panelists, let's go reverse this time. Sydney, would you want to give us any pitch, anything coming up?
Well, okay. So, I mean, I thank you all for having me here. If you'd like if you'd like to discuss anything, or if anything was like interesting to you, feel free to email me, and I'm happy to talk. So, yeah. And my email is, I'll just put it in the chat. So, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Sydney. Michael?
Yeah, no, I think as far as Chidori Band is concerned, we will be performing throughout the Bay Area for many of the obons. The first one will be the second full weekend in July. And then if, I know you may have some friends that have interest to continue to play music. We have a great band, that we'd love to have you. So even if you could play only for part-time or whatever, let us know. We'd love to expose you to our band. So, and thank you again for everybody for having us.
Thanks, Michael. And just to remind everyone, if you're not in Davis or the Sacramento area, there is Nikkei Matsuri in San Jose, Japantown the same weekend. So next week, and check that out as well. I love that it says Japanese American Festival. The flyers are really nice. And I think there's a lot of similarity between what we're trying to do here with the Davis Cherry Blossom Festival. So if you're in the Bay Area and you can't make it out here, please go to Nikkei Matsuri. Roy, anything coming up? I know it's a big year for you.
Yes, and again, thank you too for inviting us all. Really appreciate the time. But yeah, this is our 50th year anniversary for San Jose Taiko. So October 14th, they're doing a concert in San Jose to kind of celebrate that. But also PJ and I are going to be celebrating playing Taiko for 50 years. And so we have our own concert date set for November 4th here in San Jose. So if your folks are in this area at that time, please come check it out. Thank you.
Yes, all the collegiate taiko players out there, that would be a really great concert. And then PJ couldn't be here today because of other commitments, but we love hearing from PJ as well. Carlo, do you want to wrap it up? When should we see you?
Yeah, I'm really pleased to be part of this, and I'm really pleased to have a chance to meet Roy and Michael and Sydney, and you guys have a great thing going on down in San Jose, obviously, and throughout the Bay Area if you're playing. So Davis Diplomacy is going to be playing at the Cherry Blossom Festival, of course, and then a couple of weeks later we're at a crafts fair also in Davis. That's all that I know of right now. And but anyway, I'm really pleased to meet you, and thank you for letting me be part of this.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks again to all our viewers. Thank you one more time to Lisa Shiganaga, who's been also running all the behind the scenes stuff as well too. So I think that's everybody. So thanks for joining us. We hope to see you soon at our festival or at another event. Thank you. Bye, everybody.